Hello and welcome to the Mariana Dalto Show, the podcast where small business owners share their stories, insights, and strategies for success. I am your host, Mariana Dalto, and today I have a fellow coach, and I'm so excited to have him on the show today. From Business Made Simple, his name is Jonathan Sheeley. He's the founder of the Sheeley Executive Consulting, and he has a decade of experience in strategic planning, marketing, and leadership development. Jonathan leverages story branding and the Business Made Simple framework to support business growth. And he's also a big proponent of the double win lifestyle from Full Focus Company, guiding leaders to balance their professional and personal lives effectively. So welcome, Jonathan, to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So excited to be here. I love podcasting, and it's good to do it with someone else who shares a lot of the same philosophy for business and life as well.
Yes, I'm excited, so excited that you are in the show today. So thank you for joining us. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your journey starting your business, the Shelley Executive Consulting Firm.
Oh man, it's a funny story that's really long, so I'll do the short version of it. I did a decade in higher education, and if you know anything about higher education, it's an awkward path to be a business owner if you've been stuck in academia. But what happened is I was on the staff side, and I started interacting with Donald Miller just for resources so that I could do better work in my communications and marketing department. And it kind of occurred to me at some point that I absolutely loved the light bulb moment when either a coworker or an employee, a faculty member would finally get what it takes to do good marketing and to have good story branded messaging. It's an aha moment that I'm not a teacher, but I do love that aha moment when the principles stick. So when I needed to make a career pivot, it was kind of a tough thing. I went through a long process of looking for other jobs, and nothing felt right. And so it just kind of occurred to me, what would happen if you started your own business? What would you do? And so I stuck with that. My wife and I were talking over breakfasts and dinners and stuff. And it just always came back to using Business Made Simple because as much as I enjoyed my career in marketing, I would not want to do an agency model like a lot of my friends are doing. And even a lot of our, in our community, that Business Made Simple community, there's a lot of marketer agencies. And God bless you guys, I did not want to do that. And so I decided to do consulting primarily on the leadership side because that's where I love it. And I know there's a lot of people who, when I say strategy, meeting, plans, they all get triggered. But that's the stuff that gets me up out of bed in the morning. So if I can help other people do the work that is hard for them, I can make it easier for them. I can give them some predictable processes for it. But I was like, well, I had better get into business for myself as opposed to signing on to someone else's work. So that's kind of that's the real fast version of it. And being able to work from home, obviously, I can have my babies at home. My wife is here, so it's the best. I have the best coworkers, and I can just run upstairs for a cup of coffee and see my favorite people if I want to as well. So that's a nice perk.
I love it. I love it. I agree. I'm the same way. I love Business Made Simple. I love Donald Miller and what he teaches about communication. So I'm with you on that one for sure. Um, so tell us a little bit more about, okay, so you focus on leadership, you coach on leadership,
Mhm.
and when you work with your clients, what are maybe the biggest challenges that you face first within your own business, and then we'll talk about your clients. First, within your own business, when you started like working and building your own journey.
Well, I think one of the biggest challenges most business owners have is identifying who they want to work with. Because when you finally get it, everything is just that much better. But until you find those people, it can be really tough because you start having these conversations and you're like, I agree with 60% of what that person said. And it seems like they would be very interested. And there's a lot of people who are, quote, interested in working with you, but they never convert. And usually that means that you haven't found the right person. And so that I do for other people now is what I really enjoyed, which was a little bit of the market analysis to see where is the industry in my area going? Where are the people that really have needs? Where are they? What kind of gaps do they have in their business plans? And my favorite part of working is helping people identify the opportunities, at the same time, not leaving any of their current business in the dust. And I think a lot of business owners have that wrong, where they'll neglect the things that they've already done to take advantage of a new opportunity. And that's not the way you ought to do it. So you can't move in growth to a new component of your business if you don't have your existing processes and operations shored up. So as much as I enjoy working on mission statements and structures for leadership teams, and I really prefer to work with leadership teams for that very reason, is that there needs to be more than one person working on this. And as a coach, I can come in from the outside perspective and have a little bit more of a perspective on a neutral way as to what's going on in someone's business. And it was tough for me to identify that that's the component that I wanted to do as well, because you get certified through, oh, I love to do marketing and I love to do social media and I love to do the cash flow conversation, profit first, all the way. But at the same time, that stuff does not derive, I do not derive joy from helping people with their finances. Like I want them to increase their profits, but oh man, I just do not like telling people what to do with their money. So just being able to identify who I wanted to work with, and what it's ended up landing with, it's people who are already successful and they just don't know how to scale to the next level. It's people who are doing really well as far as income or revenue streams for their businesses, but they just feel like something's not quite right, or they feel like they could grow, but they don't know what the next step is. And so what I love to do now is help people take a step of reflection and say, all right, so if we did this, what could be possible if we did this next thing? So I'm a dreamer, I'm an innovator. And a lot of businesses that are successful don't have those at the top, because we are wildly frantic on day to day on how things go. And that's what makes me a great coach and not the CEO of a large corporation.
I love it. Well, I mean, from being a dreamer or a content creator, like overall, like there's people within the company wear different hats, right? Like you kind of
Exactly.
need to balance all those, roles. The bigger the company, the more people you have that will be like taking these roles. But depending on the size of the company, I see how that happens. Now, from a team standpoint, because you coach on leadership, but then so you were talking initially about like, maybe how you work with your teams and maybe what are the things that maybe need to be fixed. Do you help with the coaching the team? And then also coaching the leaders on maybe when hiring, or maybe if you already hire someone, then, well, this is how you can help them become better at their job since they're already part of your company.
Yeah, it's a great question. I tell people that I really love to work with leadership teams of 3 to 6 who are doing revenue of 1 to 15 million and have a mentality for growth. And the reason that I say a leadership team of 3 to 6 is that I find that if the other two things are accurate about are true about their company, they're doing 1 to 15 million, they're really hungry for growth. A lot of times they don't have a team leading. There's an individual at the top, and that's great, because that means that the leader, the founder, the CEO, whatever title they take, they're really gritty. They've had a good idea. They're intuitive enough as an entrepreneur to make some money. The problem usually is that they are spread too thin.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I love to do is work with an individual owner first. I won't work with a company who's I'm not working with the CEO or the founder or whatever first, because leadership does start at the top. So I'll start with the top dog, and then we'll decide who needs to be brought on to the leadership team. If you already have one, are we wearing the right hats? I'm
Mm-hmm.
a huge fan of Patrick Lencioni and the 6 Working Types of Genius. I'm not a certified guide on his company, but it is a groundbreaking book, and the principles of teamwork. So it's important, I think, to have a leadership team so that you can wear the correct hat for maximum benefit, for maximum product, and for revenue, because there's a lot of people who spend time in what we might call the drudgery zone, or the things that they're competent in, but they're not wonderful at it, and they're certainly not deriving any joy out of it, that only lasts for a season. And so you want to get someone in that role, whether it's the finances, the operations, or marketing, and not just the CEO, where you can actually have a team working on the best components of the business. And so that's why I say leadership teams of 3 to 6. I think 3 is a minimum if you want to get any higher than 15 million. Up to 6 just depends on the complexity of your business. If you're working through lots of revenue, you probably need a chief finance guy. If you're working through lots of leads at the same time, you probably ought to check out a marketing agency or a CMO, something like that. Ladies like that are really helpful in that world. So that's why I say leadership teams of 3 to 6. And yeah, I do like to work with teams together, but I start with that leader at the top.
Yeah, and also like some business owners might not have clearly when to hire, how many people they need to hire for what areas of the business. So that's where you come in and you can assess, okay, you have this much revenue. This is how you have you should have your company structure, and this is maybe you're missing a few key players that can help you move and scale your business way faster, right?
Absolutely.
So tell me a little bit about now. Let's talk about let's shift into story branding and how do you
Mm.
use that framework in your consulting firm to address the problems that the business owners have? How do you use
Oh,
that framework?
I think I have like a top 5 or a top 4 Mount Rushmore of books, and StoryBrand has been there since I read it several years ago, 2018. And the StoryBrand messaging framework is groundbreaking to free up employees on making good communication lines. When I was working in higher ed, the StoryBrand messaging framework allowed us to serve our clients as opposed to being all bravado about our alumni association. And as I started working in the businesses now after education, I found that it's even more effective in the business world where you have something to offer people. You have a product that solves problems, but you are so in your own way because you're only talking about yourself as opposed to talking about your clients, your customers' problems. People need to hear that you understand the problems that they're going through, and even like they need to hear that you get how it feels. They want to be heard, they want to be seen before they give a solution. I it's trite, but a lot of times people use this just like in relationships with dating and in marriage. Sometimes you just need to hear someone talk it out before you provide any kind of advice. It's the same thing in business. A lot of times, especially if you're working in business to business, man, your clients don't want to know how awesome you are. They want to know that that you understand them. And so as soon as you dial in your messaging framework, it's not just that the framework starts to make you money, your people start to make you money because they are free to say the correct thing every single time. It's a system, that is predictable and repeatable, and it takes a bunch of the effort out of coming to work because you know exactly what you're going to do. You know exactly what you're going to say to the next person, no matter who that person is. So cold calls are easier when you have a messaging framework. And then warm calls are a lot easier too, because you're like, listen, I understand we've had this conversation. I can really help. So it writes your marketing copy, it writes your social media posts. It is a formula that is predictable to use every single time you sit down to do any piece of content. And it is the single greatest asset that any kind of marketing team can have. I've seen so many people they're just absolutely spinning their wheels in marketing because they every time they sit down to do a new campaign, they write it from scratch. And that is huge energy wasted. If you have your messaging framework when you start, now you're starting from an awesome foundation. And yeah, sure, you're going to add to it, you're going to adjust it, but it is not the same work of creativity from scratch, which takes a lot of energy. And if it's done right, it's great. But if not, it's a drag.
Yeah, I believe in that. And it gives really clarity internally for the company, for the employees in the different departments that they have to communicate what they need to do within their roles, could be marketing, could be sales, any role within, even internally, like this is how we communicate, this is what we're doing. And then externally, that's how you talk to clients, right? That's exactly how they understand what you do for them and then how you can solve the problem. Exactly. So I agree with you.
I actually started when I was in higher ed, I started with internal brand scripts. We were building messaging frameworks for how to train higher ed employees to do better work. And so I'm glad you pointed that out, because a lot of times people only have external facing frameworks, but as a leadership team, if you have a framework for how you talk to your employees, it will take the stress out of those relationships as well. That's a huge tip, if you want to say, on how to use the framework for morale and for culture, not just for sales.
Yeah, that drives alignment. I mean, if internally they align, they understand, then whatever they communicate, it makes sense to the clients. So let's talk about a little bit about now how do you balance your professional and personal life following the double win lifestyle, and explain a little bit to people who don't know maybe what that is, and then just give us a little bit more context on that.
Well, the double win lifestyle changed my life when I got to the place in my career in education that I was, to be honest, I was quite stuck, and I even had some anxiety problems that were like physical, they were just the tip of the iceberg. And I had a wake up moment when my son was born, and I decided that, oh man, I was overweight, and my wife and I weren't on the same page on a lot of things. Like you could, when you become a parent, you have to start talking about the same things in the same way. And it's not like we had fights or anything, but it was just, there was what I call drift there. And so the double win resources, I began to build a life focus, or it's called a life plan, and be able to say, when I die, this is what I want people to say of me, and then I'm going to work towards that. It's a target. So you write your eulogy for yourself, and say, this is what I want people to say of me. And so you start working on that. And then everything as far as priorities start to click into place. And that's actually how I made my decision to resign from education and to start my own business, was to say that I had things that I wanted to prove. I had people that I wanted to help. And it's not that I wasn't doing that where I was, but I was not healthy where I was at. And so the double win is about winning at work and succeeding at life. And I would say that I was winning at work in my previous job, but I was not necessarily succeeding at life. And so I made the decision to resign, start my own business so that I could do both. And funny enough, after I told my wife that I was going to resign, she said she's going to do the same thing. She was a teacher for as long as I was in education. She was a teacher in high school, and she decided to stay home because we just had, let's say 4 months ago, we had our baby daughter, and our baby girl kind of changed the way that my wife thought about things too. And so our double win lifestyle together helped us make family decisions that benefit my marriage, that benefit both of our kids because they have different kinds of needs. And it allows me to pour into other people through my business in a completely different way than would have been possible in another structure for my career. And the whole double win lifestyle is really important for entrepreneurs, because entrepreneurs and small business owners can really get stuck working all the time on their business. And eventually your body rebels. Eventually your relationships rebel. And at the end of your life, you don't want just to be rich. You want other things in your life to be good. And so the fulfillment in life is in everything being within its correct domains and being balanced together. And so when I tell people the double win, it doesn't mean that I don't work hard, because when I'm at work, my kids know I'm at work. And I work my tail off, and I love to solve problems, and I love to be with my clients, and I am all there when I'm there. But then I can also be all the way present with my two kids and my wife when I'm at home with them. When we go for walks, I turn my phone off and things like that. So the double win is, I don't really like the concept of the work-life balance, because I would rather say when you're there, you're 100% there. I don't want to give 50-50. It's not 50% to my business and 50% to my family. It's when I'm with my business, got 100% of me. And when I'm with my family, they get 100% of me.
Yeah, it's true. And I speak with a lot of business owners through the podcast, and a lot of people go through that, right? They all find in some point in their lives that they do want the freedom, they do want to maybe have the business, they love what they're doing, but they get to a point where they get exhausted for everything, all the work that they're doing. So the rest of the part of their lives, they're falling apart. And then they end up finding solutions like the way you did with Double Win Lifestyle, where it finds a different way to really balance everything within your
Mhm.
family, business, everything. So that's good. So we talked about your business. You help with coaching, specifically on leadership. Now, tell us a little bit more. What are the ways that people work with you? What kind of like offers do you have to work with people?
Well, starting off, most people, if they're going to work with me, I want them to take a self-assessment,
Mhm.
because I could come in and I can say what I think of is going on with their business, but I don't have all the details that they do. So we always start with taking an assessment. I want them to grade themselves on the 6 major components of business, starting with leadership, and then going to sales, marketing, operations, products, and cash flow. And I want them to rate themselves on a questionnaire, and it only takes 30 minutes, 20, 30 minutes. And then they get the report back on how they did. And then usually what we'll do is we'll go over that in a free coaching call, and we'll just kind of talk through how they think they scored themselves, if there's anything that they would change. And then we make a plan after that, and we say, all right, so which of these areas is the most likely to change quickly, or which of them is the most important? And then it usually looks like an innovation day where I like to travel to people, and we'll spend a day getting to know the business. And I really do want to know the ins and outs. And so I do what's called a strategy innovation lab. And we'll spend at least one day. If it's in driving distance, I like to bring barbecue that I smoke myself, which because food always makes everyone feel better.
Of
Um,
course.
and what we'll do is we'll literally I will let you use my innovator's brain for a whole day on what is possible with your business. And then after that, if we feel like we're aligned, we'll work on a couple of different packages. I'll help people with mission statements and with core values, and how to help hiring practices get established that are that align on the front door, not just after people have been hired, because that's too late. So that's my favorite way of doing it. Usually what happens if you spend that day with me, there's going to be something that sticks out that I would love to help you craft a plan for the future. Don uses the imaging of the airplane.
Mhm.
In my line of work, in my business, I like to use the imagery of an old-fashioned sailing ship, because I think you have to have, my logo is actually the combination of a compass and a ship's wheel, the helm. And what you have to understand is that leadership takes both active control over what's going on, but you have to start with the plan at the beginning. I tell people all the time, leadership will never be the same twice. Every year will be different. Every set of team members will be different. And you can plan and you can plan, and you get better at planning the more you do it, but you still have to have an active hand on the wheel. And so that's why I like to help people at the leadership level. And then I will go on retainer with people if they just want guidance. Just because sometimes you need someone to talk to who's not emotionally interacting with everything else that's going on. But that's not the same thing as as a package where I'm actively helping you construct a good structure within your business.
Yeah, makes sense. And it's true. The assessment is helpful for you, so then you can kind of learn a little bit from their business and what they're at. And it's also helpful for the person who's taking the assessment, because they can become aware of things that they never thought about, right? Or
Mhm.
maybe through the conversation, then they're like, oh, that's a good thought or a good idea or a good insight or a good coaching that you can provide to them because of the insights that they provided to the assessment. So that's
And
good.
and entrepreneurs are remarkably intuitive. They know what's going on, They just need to adjust their perspective on what's going on through someone else's eyes for a few minutes. And when you take that self-assessment, you get asked questions that no one in your business is asking you. No one, if you're the owner, especially, no one under you is asking you
No,
how you're doing on some of these things, and you need someone from with outside. And what I love to do is when I point out that someone is doing really well in a certain area, that's the area that we'll focus on first. What makes this area very successful? Can we replicate that elsewhere? What team member is leading well? Can we replicate that culture, that mentality, and that structure? And usually it gets a lot easier once you realize that there are more positives going for you than there are negatives.
that's great. So where can people find that assessment so they can, take advantage of it?
Yeah, so you can come to my LinkedIn page, or you can go to my website, sheelyexecutiveconsulting.co, or Jonathan Sheeley on LinkedIn. You can find it in the self-assessment. The business test is right there as soon as you get to the page, or it's in my bio on LinkedIn. It's pretty easy to find. And if you go to the show notes of this podcast, I believe it'll be there as well. And then we'll go work real quickly after that, because if you're gonna commit to working on your business, I'm gonna be all over it, because that's what I love to do.
We need to take action. That's how it works. Not
Exactly.
just the assessment. Then you need to follow through. That's good. All right. Well, thank you so much. I appreciate Jonathan for being for providing all these insights for our listeners. We will put those details that Jonathan mentioned in the show notes, so you can follow him or find the assessment or anything that you need to learn from Jonathan. Thanks again for joining us today. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. We will again add all the stuff in the show notes. And for the listeners, please don't forget to subscribe and leave a review if you enjoy this episode. Thank you so much.
Thank you.